Hello, and welcome to Tap That MTG, the show where we tell you everything we know about magic that's probably wrong but fun to talk about. I'm Shauna,
I'm Leslie.
and today we are bringing you another Precon deep dive. And in this video, we're going to break down all the cards, talk about the deck, what we think it's meant to do, and how to use it. And then, if you wait and stick around with us till the end, we will offer some suggestions for tweaking this deck to make it even better. So,
Mm-hmm.
without further ado, Leslie, tell us about this deck. What it's going to do.
Alrighty. Alrighty, partner. This deck is called Desert Bloom, and it's all about the plants in the desert. We have Yumi, the Proud Protector, as our commander.
Yuma.
And basically, what you're going to do with this deck is utilize the landfall triggers. You're aiming to benefit from putting lands, specifically deserts, in your graveyard. So there's a lot of desert cards in your land pool, but if you have the opportunity, I'll just say right off the bat, look for every desert out there possible and put all the deserts in this deck.
Yep.
So Yumi the Proud Protector costs one less to cast for each land card in your graveyard. So he's going to continually be cheaper and cheaper to cast, which will help with some of that commander tax if he dies. And when he enters the battlefield or attacks, you can sacrifice a land, and if you do, draw a card. So you can get those deserts into your graveyard if you've already played them to draw a card, which is great because it's some extra card draw. Then, when a desert card is put into your graveyard from anywhere, you get to create a little 4/2 green plant warrior creature token with reach. And I will just say, I love the little cute little baby on this little artwork. He's adorable. And I love all the plants and artwork in this deck. The alternative commander for this deck is Kiri, the talented sprite. And of course, he's talented. She's talented. Sprout. And for 4, you have a 0/3, and other plants and tree folk you control get +2/+0. Also, at the beginning of your post combat main phase, so your second main phase, you get to return a target plant, tree folk, or land card from your graveyard to your hand. So it doesn't matter if they die, you're going to get them back. So that will be a fairly high impact card for you if you don't use her as your commander. And then, yeah.
I like the little
Let's
bow in
break
her
this.
hair.
I know, right? I mean, it could be his hair too. Like, I
Yeah,
don't know.
whatever.
It's fine.
Yeah. In their
Whatever.
hair.
In their hair. So what about this deck breakdown? Tell us what it looks like.
Yeah, so the mana curve is pretty good as far as mana curve goes. It's got mostly that nice little bell shape that we like to see. There are
Except for
five
the 6 at
cards,
10.
except for the 6 of 10, yeah. For five five cards at 0 to 1 cost, 11 at 2, 16 at 3, 4 at 8, 7 at 5. But at 6 and up, there are 13. So it
Mm-hmm.
does have a little bit of a high end, but it's got green in it, so you
We're
can expect.
landfall deck, so we have lots of
That's
land.
right. That's right. So then, as far as the colors go, speaking of green, there are 26 green cards in this deck, of course, and only 7 red and 11 white, about 7 colorless, and the multicolor, there are 9. There are 40 lands in this deck, but we know why that is. We're going to go over that. We've got 28 creatures, 23 instances and sorceries. It's going to help us do our job here. And we have 4 enchantments and only 5 artifacts. So
Mm-hmm.
that is what we have for the breakdown. Leslie's going to tell us about the formula that we like to use when we evaluate and build
Mm-hmm.
decks.
So we like to evaluate our decks as well as any of the other decks that we talk about based on this formula. Basically, we think that you should have 15 ramp, 15 removal, 13 card draw, 12 high impact, those are your game winning cards, and 10 other cards that support your deck altogether in a well balanced deck. Of course, they can fluctuate up and down in those categories as you see fit, 2 to 3 cards, and that's totally fine too. But that's what we're going to use to evaluate this deck. And our first section is.
Ramp and mana generators. The deck calls for 15. Sorry, the formula calls for 15. The deck has 8. So we are starting off with our traditionally included our artifacts that we love to have. The Soul Ring, which of course is a 1 mana cost. Pay 1 mana, and you get 2 mana from it. And Arcane Signet, which is a 2 mana cost artifact that you get to tap for any color in your commander's color identity.
Mm-hmm. And Chromatic Lantern for 3. Lands you control can now tap for any color, which is lovely. Doesn't matter what they are. And it also taps itself to add 1 mana of any color.
Nice. The Mending of Dominaria, it is a nice little saga enchantment. So the way sagas work, it costs 3 and 2 green. And when it comes out, you get to do the first, so the level, first level one, which is mill 2 cards. Then you may return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Next turn after that, for 2, like your turn has to be. So you do this after your draw step. You do the second level, which again is the milling 2 cards. And then finally, on the third time around, you get to return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield, which in this deck would be really handy. And then you get to shuffle your graveyard into your library. What?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's lovely because you're hopefully sacrificing all these lands or putting them into your graveyard, but you get them all back, so it doesn't matter, which then you can then do again. So Harrow and Explore are our next 2. They're both green spells. Basically, Harrow, you sacrifice a land, but you get to search for 2 basic lands, and then Explore gets you to play an additional land and draw a card. So just some good play extra land spells.
Green stuff. Mm-hmm. Map the Frontier, which I believe is a new card. It's for 3 and a green. It's a sorcery that says search your library for up to 2 basic land cards and or desert cards and put them onto the battlefield tab, then shuffle. Really handy for this desert deck.
Mm-hmm. Hour of Promise. This one is from Hour of Devastation, way back in Amonkhet days. It is a 5 mana cost sorcery. You can search your library for 2 basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. Then if you control 3 or more deserts, you create 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. So why not take advantage of having those deserts?
Yeah, and this you get to search for those deserts. You don't have it doesn't have to be basic.
Doesn't have to be basic.
Yeah, it's nice. Vengeful Regrowth for 4 and 2 green. It's a sorcery that says return up to 3 target land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. And you create that many 4/2 plant warrior creature tokens with reach. So you made creature tokens. You made those same tokens by sacrificing those lands, but now you bring them back and do it again. Mm-hmm. Ooh, and it has flashback, so you can do it again. So there's plants breaking down the doors there.
All these cute little 4/2 plants.
Take it over.
Sand Scout for 2 is another new to this set. When Sand Scout enters the battlefield, if an opponent controls more lands than you, search your library for a desert card and put it onto the battlefield, tapped, then shuffle. Whenever 1 or more land cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere, you create a 1/1 red, green, and white Sand Warrior creature token. This ability triggers once per turn. So
nice.
Great, yeah.
Satyr Wayfinder, this is a good little satyr dude for 1 and the green. When it enters the battlefield, reveal the top 4 cards for your library. You may put a land card from among them into your hand and put the rest in your graveyard. Mm-hmm. Could be a land, could be lots of good stuff.
Elvish Rejuvenator for 3 is a little 1/1. Enters the battlefield. You get to look at the top 5 cards of your library. You can put a land card from among them onto the battlefield tapped, and then put the rest at the bottom of your library in any order. The nice thing about these cards, I'll just say for a landfall deck, if you've never played a landfall deck, is you can play your land per turn, then you can play the Elvish Rejuvenator and get an additional land, and aka an additional landfall trigger for that turn as well. So
nice. Eccentric Farmer, this is a little 2/3 for 2 and a green. It is when it enters the battlefield, you mill 3 cards. Then you may return a land card from your graveyard to your hand. So again, getting those back to your hand and playing them over again.
Yeah. Ramunap Excavator is a key card in this deck for for 3 mana, you get a 2/3, but you may play land cards from your graveyard. So you're going to want to protect this guy. Don't go swinging with him. That's not what he's for. He's just for protecting and hopefully not
Yep.
getting targeted. So if there's any way you can figure out to protect him, you're going to want to do that.
Yeah. Spring Bloom Druid for 1/1 for 2 and a green. When it enters battlefield, you may sacrifice a land. If you do, you get to search for up to 2 basic land cards and put them onto the battlefield tapped. Then shuffle.
Sacrifice a desert, go get 2 basics.
Yep.
Oracle of Maldaya for 4 is a 2/2. When you may play an additional land on each of your turns, so going forward, you can play with the top card or you will play with the top card of your library revealed, but you can also play lands from the top of your library. So you just have this additional card possibility in your hand because you can play it from the top if you need to.
World Shaper, this is a 3/3 for 3 and a green, and when it attacks, you may mill 3 cards. You don't have to, but you're going to want to. And when it dies, you return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Whoa.
Another way to get all those back from your graveyard.
Yep.
And then Scare Tiller for 4 is the last one in this section. It is a 1/4. When it becomes tapped, you choose one of these. You can put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped, or you can return a target land card from your graveyard to the battlefield. My recommendation is probably use it for the graveyard, just because you want to get those back.
Mm-hmm. Then we're on to the card drawn tutors section. So the formula calls for 13. The deck has about 12, which is pretty on par there. So we'll start with the perpetual timepiece. It's a little artifact for 2 that lets you tap and put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard. Again, filling up their graveyard. And then you can pay 2 and exile this timepiece and shuffle any number of target cards from your graveyard back into your library.
Yep. Great.
Yeah.
Bitter Reunion for 2 is an enchantment. It enters the battlefield. You can discard a card. If you do, you draw 2 cards. You're going to probably discard a desert into your graveyard. And then you get to draw 2 cards. You can pay 1 and sacrifice it, and creatures you control gain haste until the end of turn. So that's a nice little thing to do if you need it or to win the game later.
Yeah, make all your 4/2s that you just made
hasty. Yeah.
Electric Revelation for 2 and a red. It is a little instant that says an additional cost to cast the spell, discard a card. We're going to draw 2 cards. And then it also has flashback, so you can play it again later on and, do it again.
Mm-hmm. Return of the Wild Speaker for 5. You can choose one of these. Draw cards equal to the greatest power among non-human creatures you control. Or you can, non-human creatures you control get +3/+3 until the end of turn. Whichever you need at the time. Probably draw.
Yeah. Magmatic Insight is a little sorcery for 1 red. As additional cost to cast it, you discard a land card. That's okay. We're going to draw 2 cards.
And Thrilling Discovery, you may gain 2 life, you gain 2 life, and then you may discard 2 cards. If you do, draw 3 cards. Again, discard those deserts.
Yeah. Winding Way, it is a sorcery for 1 in the green, and choose creature or land. Reveal the top 4 cards of your library. Put all cards of the chosen type revealed this way into your hand, and the rest into the graveyard.
Embrace the Unknown for 3. This is a new card. Exile the top 2 cards of your library, and until the end of your next turn, you may play those cards. And this has Retrace, which means that it's just going to sit there at the top of your, or in a little exile zone until your next turn. And at the beginning of your next turn, is it after your upkeep? You get to cast it again for free. So it just happens twice.
Nice. Savine's Reclamation. This is a little sorcery for 2 in the white that says return target permanent card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. If this spell was cast from the graveyard, you may copy the spell and may choose new targets for the copy. So that would be your flashback. When you do it on its flashback, you are casting it from your graveyard. So that would happen then. But yeah, your lands would be included in that value 3 or less as well.
Because they have 0 mana value. Escape the Wilds for 5 is a sorcery. You get to exile the top 5 cards of your library. You may play cards exiled this way until the end of turn. So you're digging through your deck, you're doing some tutoring, you're finding cards, but it also has the added addition of some ramp. You may play an additional land this turn.
Mm-hmm. Skullwinder. This is a Death Touch Snake 1/3 for 2 and a green. When it enters the battlefield, return target card from your graveyard to your hand. Then choose an opponent. That player returns a card from their graveyard to their hand.
Mm-hmm.
Just helping each other out a little bit there.
Just helping them out. And then Nantuko Cultivator for 4 is a 2/2. Comes into play. You can discard any number of land cards from your hand, put that many 1/1 counters on Nantuko Cultivator, and draw that many cards.
Then we're on to the removal section, and the formula calls for 15. The deck has about 10. And we'll start off with Path to Exile, which is a nice little 1 mana cost instant that says exile target creature. Its controller may search their library for a basic land card and put that onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle.
Unholy Heat for 1. It's an instant. It deals 2 damage to target creature or planeswalker. And it also has Delirium. So it actually deals 6 damage instead if there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard. So if you're not sure what card types are, that's in the middle box where it says instant, sorcery, land. So those are your types of cards.
Yeah. And this card, I believe, has 2 types because it's an instant on one side and sorcery on the other.
Sure does.
So Heaven is the instant side. So you would play this part first. It is for X and a green. It deals X damage to each creature with flying. And then once it's in your graveyard, you would have it sitting there sideways where you can play the Earth side, and then you would exile this card afterwards. So you can cast it. So Earth deals X damage to each creature without flying. So it's X and 2 red. So there you go. You get the flyers, then the flying.
Mm-hmm.
Or sorry, the flyers and then the non-flyers.
And you can do those on the same turn if you choose as well, as
yes,
long as you have
yes,
the mana.
Yep.
Bovine Intervention, which is another new card for 2. You can destroy target artifact and give them a 2/2 Ox creature token. So you're just being nice and giving them an Ox.
Valorous Stance. This is a nice little instant for 1 and a white that lets you choose one. Target creature gains indestructible to end of turn, or you can destroy a target creature with toughness 4 or greater.
And Requisition Raid. This was in one of the other decks as well. So it has the cost of white, and then it has a little plus sign because you can do any of those as many times as you like. So Spree, you can either destroy an artifact, destroy an enchantment, put a 1/1 counter on each of those creatures. Whatever you have the mana for, you can do that many times for 1 extra.
Yes, crazy. Cataclysmic Prospecting. This is a fun art on this one. It's for X and 2 red. A new sorcery that says it deals X damage to each creature. For each mana from a desert spent to cast the spell, you make a tapped treasure token. Nice. Whoa, that's a lot of damage and a lot of treasure.
Mm-hmm. Wreck and Rebuild. Gonna wreck it. For 3, you can choose... Disney's going to cancel us. Choose 1, destroy target artifact or enchantment. Or you can mill 5 cards and then put a land card from your graveyard onto the battlefield tapped. It also has flashback, so you can do it again.
Nice. And we have good old Decimate. It is for 2, the red and the green. Sorcery that says destroy target artifact, creature, enchantment, and land. So you can't cast this spell unless all 4 of those things can be done.
Yep.
Just saying. You have to have targets.
Gotta have targets. Descend Upon the Sinful for 6. It's a sorcery, and it allows you to exile all creatures, which would include yours. Mm-hmm. But it has Delirium. So create a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying if there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard. So you can hopefully don't do this. Actually, hopefully you don't have to do this if you don't have that, but you can exile everyone's stuff and you're left with a 4/4 angel.
Nice. Then we're on to the high impact cards. The formula calls for 12. This deck has 14. So this deck
Lots.
is a high impact deck for sure. Lots of game winning plays in this. First one is Genesis Hydra. Of course, a plant Hydra. You have to have a plant Hydra in this deck for X and 2 green. When you cast the spell, reveal the top X cards of your library. You may put a non-land permanent card with mana value X or less from among them onto the battlefield and shuffle the rest into your library. And Genesis Hydra enters the battlefield with X plus one counters on it.
Mhm.
What?
So then we have Hazon, Shaper of Sands for 3. He's a 3/3, another new one. So this guy has a desert walk, which means he can't be blocked if your opponent that you're attacking has a desert. It's probably not going to be relevant in most of the games you play unless you're playing against an Outlaws deck. But this has the ability to play deserts from your graveyard. So just like Ramnap Excavator, this guy is going to allow you to get those deserts back after you've put them in your graveyard. And then whenever a desert enters the battlefield under your control, you're going to create a 1/1 red, green, white sand warrior creature token. So you get the benefit from your deserts then going back into the graveyard when they do. So
You
lots
get
of
two.
good stuff.
Two.
Yes, 2. Yeah.
Nice. Oh, shoot. My goodness. That's crazy. This guy makes me laugh every time I see him. The
He's
Dune
funny.
Chanter. He's just a funny looking guy. Plant druid.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a grasshopper kind of. I don't know. For two and a green, it's a 2/3 with reach. And lands you control and land cards you own that aren't on the battlefield are deserts in addition to their other types.
Yay!
Everything is
All
a
of them are
desert.
deserts.
And lands you control have you tap it and add one mana of any color, so it makes them all colors. And you can tap two and mill two cards, and you gain one life for each land card milled this way. What?
Lots of good stuff with that card.
Yes.
And of course, everyone loves a Scoot Swarm. I have seen this go crazy if you let it
Mhm.
go so many times. And so for 2 mana, you have a 1/1. Try and play this as close to having enough lands as possible because otherwise he'll just die. But whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you get to create a 1/1 green insect token. However, if you control 6 or more lands, then you create a token that is a copy of Scoot Swarm. So then you have 2 Scoot Swarms, then you have 4, then you have 8, then you have
Yeah.
16, and
Crazy.
so many.
And here's Kiri again, our little talented sprout. Just reminding you that other plants and tree folk, so all those plants, including the Hydra one, get +2
Yep.
+0, and you get to return them back to your.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. So good.
So we get a nice little landfall trigger creature for 5, and
Huh.
he's a 5/4
Just a
with
little
flying,
one.
which in and of itself is amazing. But it has landfall, and whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you get to create a 0 red dragon egg creature token. That when it dies, it becomes a 2/2 dragon with fire breathing, which you can then pump your red mana in
Oh my
and
god.
do more damage. So just creating a bunch of little dragon eggs as you play land. It's great.
Yeah. Titania, Protector of Argoth for 3 and the 2 green 5/3 elemental, lovely lady. When she enters the battlefield, you return target land card from your graveyard to the battlefield. And whenever a land you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, which you are doing, you're going to also create a 5/3 green elemental creature token. This is
Great, great.
perfect card for this deck.
Yeah, she's beautiful.
Mhm.
Ancient Green Warden for 6. Definitely, I'm glad that they put this one in there because it's a
Mhm.
must have. It's a
Yep.
5/7 with reach, and you may play lands from your graveyard. Again, we need that. And if a land entered the battlefield, causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger. So, when anything that says when a land enters, this happens,
Nice.
it happens twice, an additional time. So, lots of
Yeah.
triggers.
Yes. And then, of course, because this has white in it, you've got Sun Titan for 4 and 2 white, 6/6 vigilance. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, you may return target permanent card with mana value 3 or less, including lands, from your graveyard to the battlefield. Oh my god. So good.
Crazy. And then Angel of Indemnity for 6. It's a 5/5. It has flying, it has lifelink. It's good just in and of itself. But when Angel of Indemnity enters the battlefield, return target permanent card with mana value 4 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. And it also has Encore, which means you can
God.
exile it from your graveyard. And for each opponent, you create a token that's a copy of it, attacking them this turn if able, and then of course it gains haste and whatnot. So nice little get another little 5/5 for each opponent
Sheesh.
later.
And of course, what would be a land deck without Omnath? This one is the Locus of Rage Omnath for 5/5. Or sorry, it's a 5/5 for 3 and 2 red and 2 green. He has landfall. Whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, you make a 5/5 red and green elemental creature token.
Yep. Crazy.
Whenever it or another elemental you control dies, it deals 3 damage to any target. Huh. Yeah.
So good.
Crazy. Yeah.
Angel of the Ruins for 7, 5 and 2 white. You have a 5/7 with flying. When it enters the battlefield, you get to exile up to 2 target artifacts and or enchantments. And if you don't need that, you can also plane cycle it and pay 2 and discard it to search for a plains card and put it onto the battlefield, which normally I would say don't do. But in this case, getting that extra planes or that extra landfall trigger might be better than a 5/7, but you'll have to decide that at the time.
And then Avenger of Zendikar. I can't believe this card is in this deck.
I mean, I can, but it's good.
5/5 for 5 and 2 green elemental. When it enters the battlefield, you make create a 0/1 green plant creature token for each land you control. And whenever a land comes in, you may put a 1/1 counter on each plant creature you control. Mm-hmm. You have a million plants. This is going to end the game for you. Yeah. Silly.
And this cute little new guy, Rumbleweed, for 11. So he's the highest mana cost in this deck. However, he costs 1 less to cast for each land card in your graveyard. So potentially he's going to cost 1 for an 8/8 with Vigilance, Reach, Trample, and when it enters the battlefield, all other creatures you control get +3/+3 and gain Trample till the end of turn. Oh my goodness. This one, well timed, will win you the game for sure.
Yeah. For sure. Oh gosh. Okay. So in case that wasn't enough, we're on to the support cards. These are cards that are going to help you win with those other cards. Mm-hmm. The formula calls for 10. There's only a few cards left that we haven't talked about. And they're going to help you win the game, like Swiftfoot Boots. You're going to give an equipped creature hexproof and haste for only 1. So yeah, smack them with that great big plant.
Yeah, the Rumbleweed. Crawling Sensation for 3. It's an enchantment that at the beginning of your upkeep, you may put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard. Maybe it'll be land. And whenever 1 or more land cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere for the first time each turn, you get a 1/1 green insect creature token onto the battlefield. So
your bugs are everywhere.
Yep.
Marshall's Anthem. It's a little enchantment that's pay 2 and 2 white. It has multi-kicker for 1 and a white. So when you may pay an additional 2 any number of times as you cast it. Creatures you control get +1/+1. So all those plants, all the whatever. When it enters the battlefield, return up to X target creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X is the number of times it was kicked. So if you're kicking it 2 times, 3 times, you return that many cards from the graveyard to the battlefield.
Yep. Yeah. And Turn Timber Sower for 3. It's a 3/3. Whenever 1 or more land cards are put into a graveyard from anywhere, you get a 0/1 green plant creature token. And then you can also pay 1 and sacrifice 3 creatures, so those little plants that you got, to return a land from your graveyard to your hand. And then you can play it again for landfall.
And we have it's a beast. It's not a plant, but its name has plant in it. Perennial Behemoth for 5. It's a 2/7 artifact creature that says you may play lands from your graveyard. So that's really helpful. And you can unearth for 2 which means you can return it from the graveyard to the battlefield, and it has haste, and then it gets exiled. So you get to do that twice. Nice.
Yeah. So yeah, that is all of our cards in this deck. Our land, as we said, there are 40 land in this deck. We usually recommend between 34 and 35. However, because this is a very landfall, land specific deck, you probably aren't going to want to tweak there. We have a number of tweaks that we want to recommend to you, but it's going to be hard to decide because there are so many high impact cards in this deck. There's not a lot of just support cards. So, I mean, this deck is probably not going to need to be tweaked hardly at all, but we have some options for you if you want to make it even more powerful. So that will bring us on to our tweaks. And the first set of tweaks have to do with things that have power and toughness equal to the number of lands you control. So Multani is our first one for 6. She has reach. She has trample, which is important, and she gets +1/+1 for each land you control, in on your that you control on your battlefield as well as in your graveyard. And then you can pay 2 and return 2 lands you control to your hand, which is great anyway, and return her from the graveyard to your hand. So you're going to be able to just keep bringing her back. Then those lands that you put back in your hand, you're going to get to play for landfall. So this is a really great option for this deck.
Mm-hmm. Rampaging Brontodon. This is a 7/7 trample for 7. Just by itself is awesome. But whenever it attacks, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each land you control. This card is going to win you the game.
Mm-hmm. It's the trample, right? Beanstalk Giant is also a great one for going and getting lands as well as being big. So he's 7 mana cost, but he has this nice little sorcery attached to him that you can do first if you choose. You can pay 3, search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. That goes out on an adventure until you feel like casting Beanstalk Giant. When it comes in, its power and toughness are equal to the number of lands you control.
And Gaia's Blessing, it's a nice little sorcery that has for 1 and a green. Target player shuffles up to 3 target cards from their graveyard into their library. Getting some stuff back, you draw a card. And when it is put into your graveyard from your library, you shuffle your graveyard into your library. So if you happen to mill it, that would be okay because you get to put everything back into your library.
Yeah. Which will help get those lands back. Although it can go wrong for you because some of these are like based on how many lands are in your graveyard. So that may not be well for you in this deck. Who knows? Black Blade Reforge for 2 is an equipment that gives +1/+1 for each land you control. So if you were to put this on like Multani or any of those others, they would get that twice for the number of lands you control. So
crazy. And then Bristly Bill Spinesour. This is another cool plant druid from the new set. A 2/2 for 1 and a green, has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on target creature. Definitely going to be doing that. And you can pay 3 and 2 green to double the number of 1/1 counters on each creature you control. What?
Yeah. and then the other thing you might want to add into this is some of the other great landfall cards that are out there in these colors. So the first one is Amari Angel for 4, is a 3/3, and whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you can create a 1/1 bird creature token. So if you need to get in for some flying damage because you can't get in with your plants.
Yeah. The Geode Rager. This is another really good card, landfall card. 4/3 for 6. Has first strike, though, which is really awesome, and landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you goad each creature target player controls. So goading makes them have to attack, but they can't attack you, which is awesome.
Because it leaves them open and makes them attack, and they might lose their creatures. It's great. Rampaging Balos for 6. It's a 6/6. It has trample, and of course, whenever a land enters the battlefield, you get a 4/4 green beast creature token.
Nice. Belladar Retreat. This is a nice little enchantment with landfall that says whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you choose 1. You either make a 2/2 cat beast creature token, or you can put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control, and they get vigilance until end of turn. What?
Crazy. We also thought perhaps green sleeves might be a good addition to this deck for 5. She has protection from planeswalkers and from wizards, which is probably not going to matter for you. But her power and toughness are each equal to the number of lands you control, and whenever a land enters the battlefield, you get a 3/3 green badger creature token. So she has a landfall trigger as well as she is a big dude with your lands.
Awesome. Bosiju reaches skyward. This is a nice little saga that you might want to put in. I think I explained sagas before, but basically, the first time out, search your library for up to 2 basic forest cards, put them into your hand, then shuffle. Second time out, you put up one target land from your graveyard on top of your library. And 3 is you can exile this saga, then return it to the battlefield transformed under your control. And then it flips over into a creature that I'm sure Leslie's getting for me.
I am. Transforms into
Transforms
a
into
0/0 reach creature that gets +1/+1 for each land you control. So,
yeah, there you go.
yeah. And then Animist Awakening for X and a green. You reveal the top X cards of your library. Put all lands from among them onto the battlefield tapped. The rest of the bottom of your library in random order. Of course, every time one of those lands enters, that would be a landfall trigger. It also has spell mastery. So if there are 2 or more instance or sorcery cards in your graveyard, you get to untap those lands. So that's always a great thing too. So we think that would be a really good add.
And Blossoming Tortoise, it's a nice little 3/3 for 2 and 2 green. A little turtle, whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks you, mill 3 cards, then return a land card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. And activate abilities of land you control cost 1 less to activate. Don't have a lot of that in this deck, but and land creatures you control get +1/+1. So if you're turning your lands into creatures, that would help as well.
Yeah. So we also thought maybe trying to get those lands back from your graveyard to the battlefield. There is, as we went through the card, there is quite a few of those, so you may not need these, but there are a few other ones out there that are pretty good that we thought we'd suggest. So there is a Conduit of Worlds, which is 4. It's an artifact. It just says you may play lands from your graveyard. The benefit of having it on an artifact instead of a creature is that they can't just kill the creature and get rid of that option for you. Artifacts and enchantments are harder to get rid of. This one also has tap and choose target non-land permanent card in your graveyard. If you haven't cast a spell this turn, you may cast that card. If you do, you can't cast additional spells this turn. But if there's something in your graveyard that you want to cast, basically this gives you some graveyard recursion on an ongoing basis just by tapping it. It's the only thing you can cast, but yeah.
Circle of Land Druid, it's a little 1/1 gnome druid for 1 and a green. When it enters the battlefield, you may mill 4 cards, and it has natural recovery, which says when Circle of Land Druid dies, you return target land card from your graveyard to your hand. So just helping you get those lands back.
Yeah, and of course, Crucible of Worlds is a 3 mana cost artifact. You may play lands from your graveyard. Simple.
Yeah. Then we have a nice little bear, the Lumra Bellow of the Woods. It's a 4 and 2 green, an elemental bear with vigilance and reach, and its power and toughness are each equal to the number of lands you control. When it enters, you mill 4 cards and return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Whoa.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then Deeproot Wayfinder, when it deals combat damage to a player, you get to surveil 1. So surveil is you look at the top card, or however many surveils you have, and then you can choose to put them into the graveyard. So that would be great for getting those lands into your graveyard. And then you may return a land from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So yeah, both things there.
Whenever it does combat damage, which is nice.
Yeah.
Renin 7, so it is a 5 loyalty planeswalker for 3 and 2 green. +1 is reveal the top 4 cards of your library. Put all land cards revealed this way into your hand and the rest in your graveyard. 0 is put any number of land cards from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. -3 is create a green tree folk creature token with reach. It says this creature's power and toughness are each equal to the number of lands you control. So big, don't be thing. And the -8, which isn't too hard to get to. Return all permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. You get an emblem. You have no maximum hand size.
So everything, including your lands, because they are permanents, go back to your hand. Emblem stays with you forever. They can't get rid of it. So that is it for this time. Thank you so much for watching. Please feel free to connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We would love to hear how you would tweak this deck. Again, there's lots of options out there, and we always love to hear your suggestions. That's it for this time. We will see you next time. And in the meantime,
Tap those magic cards and have fun doing it. Thanks, everyone.
bye, guys.